everyone, and welcome to JSA TV, where we're kicking off day 2 here at ITW 2025, sitting just outside of Washington, D.C. in National Harbor. I'm Barb Mitchell, and I'm joined today by Raman Sharma, who is COO of Stylus Networks. So great to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. Bright and early here, day 2. And tell us, for our viewers who may not know, just a little bit about Stylus Networks.
Yes. So now we have a little bit more experience from last 6 years helping carrier community, ISPs, and overall network service provider. Uh, so we are based in London. Recently, we have launched the US operations. So we have Stylus Network in New York, and we have also expanded in India. So and Germany. So we have Europe, US, and India, and we provide cloud infrastructure, private cloud, enterprise networking, hardware, migration. So all those services around the infrastructure.
Interesting, yeah, and so you're based in London, right?
Yes.
I know you have, as you said, you have operations globally, really, at this point. But you're based in London. You've made the trip over here to ITW, and what's sort of the draw for you to be here for the week, and what's the week have in store for you?
Oh, it's very exciting, because as you understand, telecoms is like a global industry. So we have to build networks across the world. So then those networks need hardware deployed locally for subsea capacity as well as for enterprise networks.
Yeah.
And for enterprise, it's a global kind of customers. So they have on-prem network in UK, Europe, as well as in US. Like take example of Coca-Cola, for example, or BMW. So they have everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing. So we want to make sure that the supply chain issues that industry is facing, that we can quickly deploy networks, hardware into the different new geographies. And as you know, the market, there are like tariffs, so many other things happening. So,
Yeah.
so if we can serve customers locally where they are, that helps, and it shortens the lead time of hardware, and cost effective as well.
Yeah, right. I know that, I'm sure you're talking about this a lot this week with everyone you're meeting with, but the demand for network capacity is just growing and growing and
Yeah.
growing. And as you said, the cost pressures that exist are increasing as well. So, what are some of the sort of the key things that you're telling the people that you're speaking with
Yeah, so
about that?
I think the capacity demand is increasing, and it will carry on increasing. But we should understand that technology is also getting better and better. So now we can deliver higher capacity with smaller power consuming equipment. And so most of the OEMs are coming up with new innovations. So we're a big fan of technology. So we advise most of the companies like to go with the latest and greatest and plan ahead and in a sustainable manner. So I think that's working very well. So it's a happy problem to have.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's true. So when you look at, so once you leave ITW and you head back and you're starting to look at the year ahead, what's in store for Stylus Networks?
Yeah, so for us, I think we are at a very good spot now. So we're very thankful for our customers, and I think the kind of experience they have with us, so they're very relaxed, because once they give a project to us, so we take all the stress, the headache, and we ensure that end-to-end delivery happens. Uh, so so when our customers are so happy, then it encourages us to do more and repeat those experiences again and again. And that's what so we are expanding in Middle East and covering more and more customers here in the US. So I think it's going to be a great journey for next like 12 to like 24 months. Very exciting.
Is there a particular area that's growing the fastest for you geographically?
Yeah, so I think the cloud compute and storage is something which is very and especially like fast GPUs. So that's the area that we are focusing on. Of course, networking is a great aspect of it, but lots of companies need to store more data, the videos and all. They need to be stored somewhere in data center, right? And then so we supply server storage and all those things. So that's the main focus where growth is coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that is there. Do you have any final words for us before we sort of wrap up?
Yeah, I think the experience is what matters a lot, because I think if we can make a customer like a full committed plan, like that's how long it will take to deliver, this is how the cost is going to be, there are no surprises. I think that's where we shine, you know. So we forecast, we plan ahead, and then we deliver successful projects. So it's been great.
Yeah.
And we are happy to repeat it over and over and over.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for
you.
your time, Raman. And I know it's a very busy week, so we appreciate you being able to pop over and chat with us for a few minutes. So thank you for your
Thank you
time
for
today.
having us. Thank you very much.
And thank you to our viewers for tuning in again today to JSA TV, where we're coming to you today live from ITW 2025. Until next time. Back to JSA TV, where we're coming to you today live from day 2 of ITW 2025 here in National Harbor. We're talking to leaders across the digital infrastructure industry about the latest stories, news, trends, innovations, and I'm happy to be joined by Felix Seda, who is the general manager of NJFX. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure as well.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
It wouldn't be ITW without a chat with you and your team, so thanks for joining us.
Of course, of course.
We, of course, here at JSA, most of our viewers are familiar, I think, with NJFX, but in case there are a handful that may not be, can you just tell us a little bit about the company?
Sure. NJFX is a Tier 3 purpose-built cable landing station located in Walton, New Jersey. It also serves as a co-location hub, a connectivity hub, physically interconnecting 3 separate continents, the US, Europe, and LATAM, with 4 subsea cables. So highly interconnected space and a marketplace for exchange of traffic.
Yeah. And so I feel like a big conversation that's happening, not just at ITW, but in general, is around just the growing demand for capacity, connectivity, data storage, et cetera, everything, because of the surge in demand coming from AI and all of those things. And you know, with where you're located, I know that you've been in conversations recently about, well, what's New York City going to do with this data surge, and how are they ready to handle that? And just wondering if you could sort of weigh in on that conversation here for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, AI is the prevalent topic in our industry right now and has been for quite some time. I think what you're seeing right now is everyone's looking at the space and power aspect of AI, right? And looking for locations where they could fulfill those space and power requirements. That's really for the machine learning aspect of AI.
Yeah.
But what people are not really talking about much yet is the second aspect of it, the AI inference aspect, right? And that's going to require a lot of connectivity. It's going to require where the eyeballs are, and it's not really space power intensive. There is space power connectivity requirements for that, but it's really going to be about connectivity, right? And so once all that data is trained, where the machine learning places are, it's going to come back to where the eyeballs are in a highly interconnected space, and we think we're going to be in a good spot for that.
So talk about that a little bit more, just the AI inference node and what that means from a capacity perspective.
Yeah, so we're actually going to market now with a 4.5 megawatt data hall, and again, it's really for the purpose of AI inference, right? And what we have in terms of infrastructure is going to be prevalent for that, right? We have direct subsea access to places like Norway, where there's an insatiable demand for the machine learning aspect that we talked about in terms of AI, right? Yeah. But once all that data is trained, it's going to come back to places like New York City, right? The problem with places like New York City is it's a legacy congestion point, right? So the key to this is sort of ironic. It's being where the eyeballs are, but at the same time avoiding congestion. How do you do that, right? So it's almost like you have to go to like the sub-markets outside of the city, but close enough where latency is not an issue, but you're also avoiding congestion, right? And NJFX, we built our data center and co-location hub to meet those demands, right? The convergence of physical assets, wavelengths, dark fiber, converging with direct subsea access to take on those latency sensitive requirements, but at the same time avoiding congestion points that could be an issue in terms of augmentation of infrastructure that's needed for AI.
Right. So, okay, well, this is, that's your sort of immediate short term that you're focused on right now, obviously. I mean, all hands on deck, I'm sure, to provide that. When you sort of look beyond, in the next 12 to 24 months, what does the future look like in terms of how you're planning for the growth of the industry?
Yeah, I think part of it is what we're doing right now, right? I mean, it's getting ready for those next 12 to 24 months, and it happens now. And it's all about infrastructure. It's about infrastructure demands. It's about increasing infrastructure, creating new infrastructure. And a lot of it is, like I said, it's going to be the physical assets, right?
Yeah.
There's subsea, not going away. That's going to be still a big topic, right? Yeah. Because of the growing demands of AI. I mean, there's going to be new connectivity requirements going everywhere, and the transatlantic piece is going to be prevalent for that, and that's where we come into play. So, just continuing what we're doing, focusing on the core connectivity piece, but at the same time also growing the infrastructure that's going to allow for all these new requirements to come into play.
Yeah, perfect. Well, it's always a pleasure to speak with you. There's always a lot happening with you and your team at NJFX. So so thank you. We always appreciate you taking the time, as I said.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. And thank you to our viewers today for tuning in to JSA TV, coming to you today live all day long from ITW 2025. Until next time. And welcome back to JSA TV, where we're coming to today live from the floor of ITW 2025 in National Harbor. And we're joined today by leaders across the digital infrastructure industry who are telling us stories, news, trends, and innovations that are happening right now. And I'm pleased to be joined by Brandon Roberts, who's manager of wholesale and carrier for Glow Fiber, business. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, it's a busy week. We were just talking, we're sort of day 2, and how's the week so far for you?
Yeah, it's been going great, making a lot of connections. I think that's one of the things that people are excited to get back into is just making connections with their peers and people in the industry.
Yeah, it's so important, isn't it? And I know that you probably have a lot to talk about with the folks you're meeting with because Glow Fiber's been expanding really quite rapidly. So can you share with us some of that, some of what's happening?
Yeah, be happy to. So Glow Fiber has been expanding rapidly, and really our growth is can be attributed to a few factors. Number one is our commitment to our fiber first strategy. And really, to give you an idea of scale, this time in 2022, we had about 330,000 passings. Right now, we have over 600,000 residential and business passings. That's 3 short years, almost doubled the size of our footprint, and that's just an incredible testament to how efficient the teams have been working at Shentel, building out these greenfield areas and getting fiber to the home and business. And really, this is mainly in the underserved and rural markets, which really can assist our carrier customers to being able to get to those businesses that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to get to before, which is awesome. So that's number one. Number two is our M&A strategy. We recently acquired Horizon, and with that came a strong commercial focus. In addition to that, they had an adjacent network to ours, which really complemented our network and being able to get to right now 8 states, which is awesome. And then last but certainly not least is the people power. A lot of great people came over from Horizon, which complemented our Shentel team and have created kind of this super team, which we're super proud of. Third, I would say, is really our dedication to delivering an exceptional customer experience. Our technicians live in the areas that we service. Our salespeople live in the areas that we service. Our customer service is in the area that we service. We don't farm that out overseas. So when you talk to a Glow employee, a Shentel employee, you're talking to somebody whose kids are at the same baseball games that you are. They shop at the same grocery stores that you do. And so we put a really high emphasis on the customer experience. And this is really, you can see this in the fact that our churn is industry leading low. Once people come aboard the Glow train, they don't leave. They don't get off the Glow train. Yeah. And certainly, lastly, people vote with their wallet and certainly NPS scores. You can look at our NPS score, and they're certainly significantly higher than the industry average for the telecommunications industry, which just goes to show that people love Glow. And then I would say last, but not least, is our relationships that we've built with our carrier customers. The fact that we've invested heavily in our network, invested heavily in the underserved and rural markets, gives our carrier customers an option that they didn't have before. So really, it's a win-win-win. It's a win for the end user who now has another option. It's a win for our carrier customers who can now service that customer where they didn't have the option before. And it's a win for us to bring another customer on board. And so we're really proud of our strategy, and it's certainly working.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's always so nice to hear a really clear, well thought out strategy with, set pillars. And one of the areas I kind of wanted to dive into a little bit further with you, I'm sure that you're experiencing it like everyone is, just this conversation around increased demand for high bandwidth services, et cetera, just with AI and everything coming on board with that. So how are you reacting to that and, with your fiber services?
Yeah, it's almost table stakes. 10 gig was table stakes a few years ago, 100 gig, and certainly we're hearing 400 gig now. We've got now, with the acquisition of Horizon, over 17,000 route miles of fiber. And we're in an 8-state footprint now. And we're really committed to building high capacity, low latency, carrier grade networks to be able to service our carrier customers. We are in over 30 data centers, from Cermak into Chicago to WOW in Columbus to Equinix in Ashburn. We're all over the place. And we really want to give our carrier customers different options, whether they want to be in the high demand data centers or they want to be a little bit off the beaten path. And we're there, and we can service them with high capacity, low latency data needs. We are continuing to upgrade our network and our backbone. This year alone, we're spending millions of dollars to forklift portions of our network to be able to ubiquitously offer these high bandwidth, high capacity circuits across our entire footprint, which is just awesome to give our carrier customers the ability to service their customers with the demands that they require.
So going a little bit further with AI, again, not to keep coming back to that, but I just feel like it's a topic that's so important to so many, and it has been for years, but it just keeps escalating. So what kind of advice are you giving to your carrier partners that you work with, and how they can best leverage your services to meet that demand?
Yeah, AI is awesome. It really is a game changer, both personally, I think, and professionally. Everybody should be using AI in just their daily life.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I mean, it really cuts down the decision making and allows that brain power to be used for other more mission critical tasks. And so even simple things like SOPs and just creating processes, and a lot of organizations just lack simple documentation and onboarding documentation and things like that. And so we can be using AI to fill those gaps. From an organizational perspective, I would say a couple things. One is to keep it simple and stick with the fundamentals. And I would say that because really we can look at this in a few different ways. One is, how are we going to use AI for operations? And then how are we going to use it to impact the customer experience? I think we need to bucketize that in two ways. And when we talk about operations, we're talking about things like preventative maintenance, for instance. We're talking about things like personalized service experiences, like chatbots, for instance, or predictive analytics, for instance. Being able to take a holistic view of a customer and package it nicely so that people know exactly what they have, what their trouble tickets are, what their customer tickets are, and really being able to dive into the data. And then certainly from a customer experience perspective is really just being able to give the customers the information that they want, maybe even that they didn't know they wanted. And I really think that it comes down to your data strategy. So how do you implement this? And really it's the number one thing that you need to do is to define the win. Figure out what you want to get out of AI. And you've got to be able to clearly define that. And then once you've kind of documented what that win looks like, it's being able to provide clean data. It's garbage in, garbage out with AI. And so if you have clean data and you know exactly what your win is, and then you can load that into the large language model and get the outputs that you're looking for. But then the last step is, how am I going to implement what the AI is telling me to do? What am I going to do with the information that AI is giving me? And you really have to have an implementation strategy. What am I going to do with this, and how am I going to put this into action? And I think if you think about those things and document them beforehand and really focus on the customer experience, then it's going to be a win.
That's a really helpful outline. We could print out a user guide, I think, from that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Any final words here, as you enter I guess it's the second half now.
Yeah, we're in the second half. Keep making those connections.
Yeah. Thank you for your time today, Brendan.
Absolutely.
We really appreciate it. And thank you to our viewers for tuning in today to JSA TV. Keep tuning in live as we're coming to you today from ITW for the remainder of the day. And until then, stay connected.
See you.
Back to JSA TV, where we're coming to you today live from the floor of ITW 2025 at National Harbor, just outside of Washington, D.C. And we're talking to leaders from across the industry, where they're sharing stories, news, trends, and innovations impacting digital infrastructure. I'm pleased to be joined today by Juan Salazar, who's the CEO. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I know that MDC has been going through a really rapid growth period, I believe. So tell us about how you're managing that and what some of the strategic priorities are for you.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
Yeah,
It's always good to be with you guys. So, I say, as far as what our priorities are, we're announcing a new data center in Mexico, in Querétaro. It's our first data center. Uh, so, MDC has always had a vision of connecting the entire border to essentially go from the Gulf of Mexico to the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
And with our two final locations that already been announced, Brownsville and Calexico, we're kind of completed that vision. So what's next for MDC is this new era is really Mexico focused, and we're starting with our new facility in Querétaro. Uh, and yeah, so we're really excited about that, and hope to see that be up and running in Q1 of next year.
Okay, Q1 2026.
2026. Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, we'll be talking about it next year then. But so why is this important? So why are those the areas that you're focused on when you sort of think about what's happening across the industry and growing demand? Why are these new locations important to you, especially as you think about the border and moving into Mexico?
Yeah, I think for us in Querétaro, we feel that there's an underserved opportunity, and it's really about bringing our same exact model that we do on the border, being more of an interconnection hub. Uh, One of our good friends called it "meet me rumsote," which there is no translation in English, but essentially it means being a big meet me room, and that's what we want to be in Querétaro. So we're not a huge data center; we're really just focused on interconnection, and we want to take that same uh, value prop down to Querétaro.
Yeah, you mentioned interconnection. I know that it becomes increasingly important. It's important across the industry right now when we think about the workloads and processing demands. Um, Tell us a little bit more about that in terms of how you're setting that yourselves up, MDC, to be really the solution to this in a lot of ways.
I think we're responding to. There's all this new routes that are being built from the border down to Querétaro. I was on a panel yesterday with my good friend Simon Mazri from Centro, and they're building a new cable that goes from Phoenix all the way down to Querétaro. Uh, so it's called Tikval, which is Hebrew for hope. So I like the way he did it.
Yeah, nice.
Our friends at Fermaca Networks, they're building a new cable that goes from El Paso to Querétaro. And then you've got Neutral Networks that is building Laredo to Querétaro, and finally Axtel building McAllen to Querétaro. So all these fibers have to land somewhere,
Yeah.
and we want MDC to be that place where they all land. And by the way, the new submarine cable coming in to Veracruz and Cancun, we also want those to land at MDC. Just be a big meetup place for everybody.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and adds a lot of value, I think, to the markets that you're in as well. Yeah, and so ITW is always a busy week, right? We're we're about halfway through at this point, right? Sort of day two,
Yeah.
halfway. How's the week so far for you, and what are you hoping, as the week continues in terms of the conversations you're having and the people you're meeting with here?
Well, I mean, I like coming to DC, so I think there's a lot of advantage, a lot of good food, a lot of good place to go. But we like the way the show is going. Had a lot of productive meetings. I get to see a lot of people in one location, which is always challenging, especially on the U.S. side. I think in Mexico, when I go to Mexico City, I can like touch base with a lot of people there. But on the U.S. side, it becomes a lot more challenging. So I think ITW gives us that. So I really like it.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. Any final words for our audience before we sign off?
I think I would say that even though MDC we're going into Mexico now, the border is where we were actually born. I'm from McAllen, born and raised. So I think those markets on the border are just going to keep growing. So for me, it's more like reinforcing the border as they become more important markets. But I think Querétaro is what's next for MDC, and that's what we're going to be focused over the next 5 years. So
Okay. Yeah.
that's it.
Well, thank you. It's always a pleasure to catch up and hear what's happening at MDC Data Center. So we appreciate your time. Enjoy the rest of the week. Enjoy the rest of the show. And we'll hopefully talk to you again next year.
Thank you for having me.
That's happening. Yeah. And thank you to our viewers for tuning in to JSA TV, where we continue to come to you live from ITW 2025. Stay tuned. Until then, happy networking. And welcome back to JSA TV, where we're coming to you today live from the floor of ITW 2025. We're having conversations with leaders across our industry, talking about all the greatest news, stories, innovations, trends that are impacting digital infrastructure. I'm pleased to be joined by George Nolis, who is the CEO of Balkan Gate Greece, a Lancome entity. George, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, so great to chat with you. And I know, really interested to hear a little bit about the region that you support to start with. And so I know that Balkan Gate you're really strategically positioned within Greece, right in the center of the digital hub. And talk to us about why that's important and what that means in terms of location.
I could say that Balkan Gate is positioned in Thessaloniki. Thessaloniki is the second in size city of Greece, but historically was the biggest trade center in the region. So we are very close to the borders of Bulgaria, of North Macedonia, Albania, also Turkey. And we have a very small distance through the Adriatic Sea to Italy. This means that Thessaloniki is actually a crossroad. So Balkan Gate is privileged to have right now all the connectivity that is needed in order to exchange data with all those countries. And due to the fact now that we have brand new submarine cables that are coming from the south to Crete and to Athens, they are passing through Thessaloniki in order to reach the Balkans. That's why we call the data centers Balkan Gate, because they are the gateway to the Balkans. Nowadays, we see that the demand is even higher because the new route that passes through Greece is going to actually serve Central and Central Eastern Europe. So, except from being the Balkan Gate, we are becoming the gate for Central Eastern Europe through the submarine cables that are passing the Suez Canal.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how strategically positioned you really are, and I mean, beyond being the central hub in Greece, you are also, as you started to say, really connecting to bringing together Europe and Asia, etc. And so, talk about why that's important and what that means for all the local businesses you can impact.
As far as we see right now, all the submarine cables who are actually responsible for 98% of the global traffic exchange between the continents, in our territory, they are passing through the Suez Canal and they are being terminated into Marseille. But if you just Google and measure the shortest distance from Suez to Frankfurt, or from Suez to Amsterdam, or even from Suez to London, you will see that the straight line is passing only through Greece. So this is obviously the shortest path, which means it has the shortest latency.
Right.
So for all the critical services that are now up and running, but also for the services that are upcoming, for instance with AI, you need lower latency. So why this didn't happen? This is a whole story, because there were restrictions due to the fact that there was a monopoly in Greece from the National Telecommunications Organization. All these restrictions are now being raised, so anyone can use Greece as a path, and this is going to be the primary path for Europe from the Middle East, Asia, Africa, and so on. So now this is the reason why all the submarine cables that are under construction or even under discussion, they are stopping first in Greece, then in Italy, and last in Marseille, where Marseille will become the backup route.
I see. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's interesting to see that the evolution as all of these different areas start to grow and play integral roles, in global connectivity. But I also want to dive a little bit deeper. I know that we're here at ITW. A lot of people are talking now, as we have been for years, but it's continuing to increase, this talk around AI and the impact on demand. What kinds of initiatives do you have in place that are going to allow you to support those demands?
Perfect. What we are doing now in Balkan Gate is that we are upgrading the power, so we have access to a lot of megawatts, and we are already constructing the phase 2, which is the high density phase of Balkan Gate for supporting of racks of up to 30 kilowatts. So this means that we are the first data center in Greece and in the Balkans region that is AI ready. This is critical. We have serious demand from customers that want to have a presence with high capacity, high density equipment, and we are ready to serve them.
Yeah, fantastic. Anything else? What's sort of next in for you? What's on the horizon over the next 12 to 24 months? If you would, sort of, if you have a crystal ball.
Well, what is next for us is that we are preparing a long haul fiber construction that connects Athens to Thessaloniki and Thessaloniki to Sofia. This is brand new route. Nobody else has it. So this is a shortest, lowest latency path that is actually going to enhance connectivity further and accumulate all the traffic that is coming from the submarine cables in order to send it to the Balkans and, of course, Central and Central Eastern Europe.
Okay.
This is something that is missing from the market.
Yeah.
We have very old routes in Greece. The infrastructure was not ready for all these new submarine cables.
Right.
So we are building this. We are also opening some cable landing stations. And in a nutshell, what we want to say to the world and to all the operators is that Greece is open for all kind of investments. The government supports all these new aids of infrastructure, and that's the reason why there is so many discussions and so many announcements about brand new data centers that are coming to our territory.
Yeah, this is. Thank you so much for sharing this. I feel like it is a really important message that you've shared with us here, and we are hearing more and more about, Greece overall has become, top of mind for a lot of folks in terms of.
I will tell you that this is just the beginning, because Greece is actually in the corner of Europe. So this means that we are not only going to become a telecoms hub, but we are also going to become a power hub, which means that renewable energy from Egypt, from Israel, with brand new submarine power, voltage power cables are coming now to Greece in order for Europe to become more independent in terms of power.
Yeah.
And get rid of fossil fuels, of course.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, all of that is so important. Supporting sustainability, but also just meeting the pressure that's being put on the power grids everywhere across the industry. So
for us, we also have pressure in our power grids, but the fact that brand new cables, power cables are coming means that we have an excess of power. So we are exporting this power, which means that new data centers can be supported in our region, and they can have as much power as they want.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you. So Greece is ready, and Balkan Gate is ready as well. So thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. We really, really appreciate your time, and thanks for sharing all this great information with us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And thank you to our viewers for tuning in to JSA TV, where we continue to come to you live from ITW 2025. Until next time. everyone, and welcome back to JSA TV, where we're coming to you today live from the floor of ITW 2025. We're talking to leaders today across our industry about all things new, stories, innovations, trends across the digital infrastructure industry. And I'm pleased to be joined by Rich Hallahan, who's the head of solutions engineering for CleanArc Data Centers. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we appreciate that you made your way to us to talk a little bit today. We really want to share the story of CleanArc Data
Sure.
Centers with our audience. And so maybe we could start by hearing from you, just high level, tell us a little bit about CleanArc.
Certainly, we're a fairly new entry into the data center development world. We've been focusing on kind of the hyperscale, larger campus, probably going to be in the AI realm as far as the eventual deployment. We have a number of properties that are under control for us, and we're moving forward with our first site here in Virginia, which is really exciting. So we're looking forward to that. We're growing. I think we're expected to be a double in size personnel-wise by the end of the year.
Oh, wow.
So we're gotten a lot of traction recently. So it's good.
That's significant. One term I've heard thrown around a little bit from CleanArc is this true additionality.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us what you mean by that.
Sure. With true additionality, we realize that having a sustainable aspect or renewable component has become very important, especially with our larger customers. They have corporate goals, and some have stated that by 2023 they want to be carbon neutral. So we've taken that aspect of our industry, which is primarily associated with power, and we're trying to close that gap for our customers. So when they work with CleanArc, we've already worked with those in the renewable industry, whether it's solar or wind or some other aspect, to be able to contract and deploy that level of power in the region versus maybe across the country or some other region, so that we're really providing kind of that aspect of green aspect, shall we say, to the data center consumer at the beginning of the process, and it's not left to them to fulfill as they start to build out and occupy the site. So,
Right. Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And
sure.
the other thing I know that, with all of the plans that you have in place, I think it becomes very important. Some of the work you've been doing to build new investor partnerships.
Yep.
Tell us about, first of all, what those are, who they're with, and
Sure.
what that means for you.
Personally, I came from a large REIT before I came to CleanArc, so it's been a really fun entrepreneurial experience, and part of that is getting the investment to continue to move forward. So about a year ago, almost a little over a year or under a year ago, CleanArc partnered with Snowhawk as our primary investor at the time. And what I've come to learn is growing that investment component is a continuing job, ongoing. So in the past month, we've been able to announce also a partnership with Townsend, and Nuveen will be working with Snowhawk as well to invest specifically into the CleanArc. So the best part about that is it kind of gives us a little more freedom and opens things up. So now we have a lot of things that we were planning, right? And now that we've got this assurance of funding, we really feel that we can kind of really hit the ground running and start to move. Our expectation is that by the end of the year, we'll have 6 to 8 sites under control around the country, which will really amplify kind of our presence. So we're looking forward to that.
Yeah, amazing. That makes a huge difference in just allowing you to sort of play out your vision, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's been really interesting for me to be able to be there at the beginning, and it's been fun to contribute. It's a great team, and I enjoy quite a bit working with everybody. So it'll be fun.
So tell us just in sort of parting words here, if there's anything you can kind of give us a little peek into the future for what's coming.
Well, I think the biggest peak that we have is, especially if anybody at a conference will know, we have a site with power. We are, about a month or so away from our official groundbreaking for our site here in Virginia. It's about an hour south of here, strategically located between the Northern Virginia market and Richmond. So we're really excited to get that site really moving, pushing dirt, and going vertical probably by the end of the year. So that's
fantastic.
We're real.
Yeah, you're real. Yeah,
I see enough people talking about fake data centers, and this is now we're for real.
You're like, no, it's actually happening. Yeah. That's great. So we'll be excited to talk to you this same time next year because a lot of this you'll be like, see, I told you. Yeah.
All the projects in flight. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So thank you for sharing. I hope you have a great rest of your week at ITW.
Excellent. Yeah. You as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to our viewers for tuning in today to JSA TV, where we're coming to you live from ITW 2025. Until next time. Welcome back to JSA TV, where we are coming to you today live from the floor of ITW 2025 here in National Harbor, just outside of Washington, D.C. We're talking to global leaders in our industry about all sorts of stories, news, industry trends, innovations that are really impacting the digital infrastructure space. I'm pleased to be joined by Jeff Ferry, who's Aaliyah Data Centers board member, and I'm happy to have you here.
It's great to be here. Thanks for hosting us. And so, it's a great environment. Great conversations going on. Just a lot of good things going on at Aaliyah.
Yeah, and you've traveled long and far and wide to
I was just telling you
get here.
my travel. No, it's good to be here. Good to have some of the team here. So really exciting times for Aaliyah.
Yeah. So tell us. Let's start there. Let's start with, for our viewers, some of whom may or may not be familiar with Aaliyah, but talk about who you are, the organization, and the role you play really within the Brazilian landscape.
Sure, that's great, and it's a great story, like I said. So we were kind of created or born out of the acquisition of the Oi data centers when they had a bankruptcy in 2020. So we acquired the data centers, which, as you can imagine, are very telecom centric, right? They're the hubs of the community. They were assets in Brasilia, São Paulo, Curitiba, and Porto Alegre, and so great connectivity. Spans the entire market, or a big portion of the Brazil market. Since that time, we've added assets in Rio, very highly connected asset that is the Globo TV headquarters. So a very nice data center, the most connected asset in Rio. Which it houses their kind of like global and South American kind of technology. We also bought 2 assets this past year from DXC, which is the old HP Enterprises servicing company. So we bought their data centers in Alphaville and San Bernardo. And those allowed us to have the combination of those three assets and some extra capacity in Brasilia have allowed us to kind of change a little bit of the direction and the focus of the company to now be more than just edge, kind of telecom related, to hyperscale, cloud, AI focused, distribution and customer base. So it's a great progression. We've had fantastic conversations with that client base and showing them what we can do, how we can grow the platform, and the land and power we have access to in those three markets.
And I mean, you touched on a few things that I think are pretty timely to talk about. A lot of people are talking about the growing demand that's coming. It feels like we've been talking about this for years, but it's really just at its peak now. How the industry is set to support that, and I know Brazil is going through a similar
fantastic
trajectory.
So that's and so a lot of that, in fact, it is truly real time, because our CEO, who was going to be sitting in the seat giving the interview, is on the west coast of the U.S. with the Minister of Finance at Brazil, the mayor of Rio, the head of the largest power company there, in a partnership to go pitch and tell the story of not only Aaliyah, primarily of Brazil, and and the Rio market, to be able to bring people in and talk about what's going on in Brazil, and really talk about the advantages of bringing capacity into Brazil. So those are it has a widely distributed power system in Brazil, and reliable. It has it's 90% green. So when you're building out, you're fulfilling the sustainable focus that all the cloud and all the large hyperscale companies have without buying credits. Right? It's true green energy. We have excess capacity of energy in the system. So there's 10 gigawatts of power that's not being used.
Wow.
That is available.
That's rare.
Now, it's not immediate, it's not right there, but it's available that can be built out to, that you get that. That's why the power company is there with us, of talking about the ability to kind of deliver a gigawatt, 2 gigawatts of power in a campus, say in Rio, where we have our data center. There's plenty of land, plenty of capabilities to be able to build out that. So that's the exciting part, and the meetings are literally, because they're 3 hours behind, it's probably not happening right now, but they're happening soon, in which they're meeting them all. They're doing meetings, they're doing conferences, they're announcing in the press. If you look, the mayor of Rio has already announced kind of some of these things. Secondly, I think the Minister of Finance and the government, we've been the team at Aaliyah, Alessandro, the other board members, have been talking to the government about tax relief or funding relief. And so currently there are large import duties on some equipment that comes in, including computer equipment and other equipment. There's a plan in Congress now in May, so it should be this month. It's already been kind of put forth, so we expect it to be passed. That would alleviate and it's an AI bill that would alleviate some of the import duties on these pieces of equipment, which makes it a tremendous difference in being able to build out. So that takes, I always refer to as friction. That takes one more piece of friction out of the system of why to invest in Brazil. So now we have a great story of why to build and why to build out capacity in Brazil. Green energy, excess energy, reasonable prices that are competitive, and we have relieved the duties, and so and a amazing workforce economy. It has. We're kind of right on the edge of then seeing, I think, a lot of development happen in Brazil.
Yeah,
it's exciting.
Yeah, that is exciting.
It's great to be part of.
It's a good time to be talking about this. It seems like, and sort of thinking about where Brazil's even located in terms of connectivity out to the global marketplace.
Yeah, that's one of the key things about Brazil, right? Because of the size of the country. You see it on a map, but until you fly in country, you don't realize how big the country is, right? And so with very intense connectivity in Fortaleza, which is on the northern tip to the U.S., to Europe, and to Africa, it's probably the most connected city on that side, in the Atlantic. With then legs come down to Rio and São Paulo, goes down south and hits Buenos Aires. There are plans to hit additional legs that would connect Porto Alegre, potentially connect Recife. I think there's connectivity coming into Belém. So that creates a very highly connected universe of cities and environments that is connected not only within Brazil but with U.S., Europe, Africa. So I think that's the benefit. That's the exciting part of you have the connectivity, you have a lot of capacity, you have a lot of things going positively that you see, and so that's part of the what I would say are kind of magic about the company.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a great opportunity that exists within Brazil in the market for all of the reasons you've already said. That's really still on its upward swing, and Aaliyah is perfectly positioned.
And the reason, we're unique in the fact that I'm only talking about Brazil. Well, we only have sites in Brazil right now, and I will tell you, we've talked about other markets, other expansions, but I think probably the best thing that has been working for us is focus.
Yeah.
Focus on Brazil. Right. There's plenty of opportunity, plenty of capacity, plenty of like customer demand that exists there. So you have one language, one currency, one government entity, one process, right? So I think that direction, that focus has really benefited us of just selling Brazil.
Yeah.
We also have the benefit of we're majority owned by Brazil investors. So that's unusual in that market, right? There's other players that are really, kind of US or Europe dominated, capital structures. Yeah. And so we feel like we're a data center, working with the governments, working with the communities, that is primarily Brazilian owned, primarily Brazilian capacity and sites, and focused on Brazil.
Right. And so much upside right in
and
front
so much
of you.
Upside,
yeah. Well, that's great. Thank you so much. I know it's a busy week here, so we really appreciate you taking the time to pop by and
it's always great to talk about. It's easy to talk about.
Yeah.
I never know what questions are going to come out, but I just I know what I'm going to talk about, right?
Right. You have a great story to tell.
It's very focused on, once again, focus I think is the key thing. Very focused on, developing Brazil, serving our customers, installing and executing. So, and our team has been great on all those facets.
Yeah.
So
fantastic.
Thank you.
This is exciting. It comes
very
through.
Nice meeting you.
Yeah, thank you. It's nice meeting you too.
Have a great show.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to our viewers for tuning in to JSA TV live today from ITW 2025. Until next time.
Welcome back to JSA TV, where we're covering the latest stories, trends, and innovations from leaders in digital infrastructure. I'm Buffy Harakitis of JSA, and joining me today is Benjamin von Zieger. He is the CRO of Stellenium. Benjamin, welcome.
Thank you so much, Buffy, for having us. We really appreciate the time and the opportunity.
Yes, our pleasure to have you here today live from ITW 2025. So why don't you tell viewers that are tuning in a little bit more about Stellenium, which, by the way, we were just discussing. I absolutely love the name of the company.
Thank you so much.
So give us a little bit more about the meaning behind Stellenium and what the company does.
Well, Stellenium was born from an idea of creating sovereign AI. We are the only company in the world doing this. We are moving forward with the government. We have a flagship facility in Thailand. Our business model is very different. We're not a data center company. We are an energy company. We build our own power plant. We build the data centers associated with that. We build a green backup solution. And then, of course, we build a data center AI ready for quantum computing, for supporting AI factories, for supporting the platforms from the biggest hyperscalers. And as well, I came up with an idea which was floating for several years. The interconnect business is coming back, so I'm looking to building a network access point in our flagship facility in Thailand. Why? Because the hyperscalers want connectivity, and there is no such access point in the region at all. So carriers reach out to us and they say, okay, if you want to move in there, we're going to join you. But the only big connectivity point they have is in Singapore, so they love our business model and the fact that we're carrier neutral. And Thailand is the Switzerland of the Asia Pac, so it totally makes sense to have the network access point added to the entire ecosystem, which is going to move towards a smart city.
Yes. Well, it's a stellar idea.
Yes,
hence
thank
the
you.
name
Yes.
Stellenium, which was derived from stellar and millennium, is what I hear.
Try to bring it to the next millennium.
Yes.
And the right way, and have data privacy, have data security, have the right firewalls, have the right infrastructure in place to support sovereign AI. Because today, as I said, no one is doing it, but it's something that countries are going to have to start looking at much closer look into.
Yeah, definitely. Why don't you tell us about the significant strides and the developments that you've been making with the new 300 megawatt NAP, and that's Network Access Point, for those that don't know. And can you share more about this particular project and some of the key drivers?
Absolutely, my pleasure. So the idea came from the fact that every company today, there is a data center company, they are limited to the portfolio that you get from the power grid, right? If you have 300 megawatts, your revenue, it's already limited to 300 megawatts. However, I have a different business model, a very aggressive one, because now I'm an energy company and I have 1,000 acres where I'm building 300 megawatts, but I'm building in phases. Our anchor tenant is the federal government from Thailand, so we start already with the first 100 meg being pretty much sold out. And then we're bringing the hyperscalers to serve the federal government. And the beauty of it is that we can support data center companies that want to build in the region, and they can hire Stellenium to be the builder, the operator, pretty much the smart hands, the remote hands in the region, do the sales, build the academy, and turn around. And if Digital Realty wants to have 50 acres and they want a PPA agreement for us, we'll do that. And we are very strong on moving into ESG, so we're looking at environmental, sustainability, and green. So this is the beauty: when you are not connected to the grid, you can do pretty much whatever we want to do it. And everybody in our leadership team, it's very focused on how we're going to take care of the CO2, how we're going to take care of the biodisposal. So, and we've been around for a year. I was appointed a little bit over a month ago. The traction that we had and the meetings that we had here, which is an incredible event, and we thanks GSA for always supporting us. We want to support GSA moving forward, because this is going to be built like the royal family in England for the next 300 years. But now Israel just reached out to us, Morocco, Brunei, the governments from multiple countries in Africa, where they have a data center that's only 1 to 3 to 5 megawatts. We have the know-how to build
And we will move only with the governments and only with building our own infrastructure and our own power plants. Because the biggest problem they have in our industry right now is power. I spoke yesterday on a panel. I can't believe I got very, very positive feedback. But I firmly believe that if we resolve the power issue, Buffy, we have 11,000 data centers around the world. So we have to start building in the regions, not the question comes like, why do you do this, Ben? You've been in the industry for 25 years. I'm doing it, and I look at numerous companies because I want to do an impact in the world. And I know it sounds crazy, but Mr. Beast goes over there and builds wells and homes. I want to be able to build infrastructure and have Wi-Fi for underprivileged communities, and also build an academy where people can get certifications in the regions, where they're going to know how to go into a data center. They're going to learn what is a data center. We cannot just be building in the United States.
Yeah.
And we don't have power in the United States, and it's a lot of restraints. So I have to go in the regions where I can control what I do, meaning from A to Z. And the very important thing is for us the ESG. I mean, we're really looking into that. I know a lot of people talk about it, but we want to be as green as possible because we cannot destroy the planet. So, and how can you do it if you are dependent on Dominion energy? You can't.
Yeah.
You are, and based on what happened in Europe with the blackouts, I don't see any power company giving the entitlements, the permits as quickly. So when we move with the federal government, it's a completely different story. Because again, I need a serious anchor tenant, and the sovereign AI data, it's really on everybody's plate right now. United States, California does all this, but there is data residency only in the state of Illinois, which just passed last year. There's no other regulations in the other states, so it's easy to build, it's easy to move forward, but eventually they will want to have data residency. They want to control their data. So we see what's happening with the geopolitics. So we are just trying to be carrier neutral and move forward and literally going to places like no one else has done before. So we're going to Ivory Coast, we're going to Morocco, we're going to Brunei, we're going to Israel. So we, hand in hand with the federal governments.
Yeah. Well, you tackled a lot there.
Yes.
And a lot of key topics that are important to us here at JSA and also as the industry as a whole.
Thank you.
Especially when you talk about, some of the initiatives around ESG and sustainability, which obviously greener data is one of our core passion, mission, our key initiative and movement here at JSA. And some of the other topics that you talked about, from the power dilemma that we're facing here in the world globally, and some of the things that your company is doing to minimize that. And I think that you talked a little bit about the panel that you were on yesterday. So
Yes.
I just want to bring it back to that for a second.
Sure.
It was called "Can Our Network and Data Center Handle the Surge?" So obviously you're talking a lot about the pressing challenges during that panel. What were some of the key takeaways, and how do you see the industry evolving to meet those needs?
So it was an incredible panel. My colleagues from Nokia, from Telehouse, and from Digital Realty were next to us. So we were on the same page. We are very fortunate right now that Sienna and all these other companies have developed very powerful equipment, so we can go to the edge. That's why we are going to build in the edge. But again, I cannot emphasize enough the importance of building our own power plant. Because, as I said earlier, what I took away from the panel is that if someone would have gave me $100 yesterday on that panel for the word power, I would have been a millionaire by now, because I use that word so much that it's literally, we do this the right way in Thailand, then they're going to follow us. And bringing the network access point back, NVIDIA pushed the telcos to take ownership again. So we all know from AT&T to Zayo, everybody sold the data centers. But now we want to work with the telcos. We want the interconnect. That's why I'm so focused on the network access point, because creating that critical mass is going to bring the future technologies that we're going to have an interview in 24 months. We're going to be talking about the next AI generation that we don't even know today. Right immediately after the panel, I met with Dan Caruso. They're already developing a 100 to 200 kilowatt cabinet that is going to support quantum computer and quantum intelligence. So, and they're going to be cool with Freon. So we have the know-how after 25 years building data center. I hope that I know how to do this.
Right.
So to go in and already prepare the data center that when they come with the 2 megawatt cabinet, which is going to happen, because 6 weeks ago, NVIDIA came out with 640 kilowatt cabinet. Just let's sink in for a moment. If you take 20 cabinets, you already have a 12, 15 megawatt data center, so 12 cabinets. Google, not to be beaten to the punch, they came back, oh, we have a 1 megawatt cabinet. So Dan Caruso, we all know who Dan Caruso is in the industry, is behind a company that's going to produce a specific cabinet, 100, 200 kilowatts, cooled with Freon. So this is what we're looking for. We're looking to innovate. We have to. It's no other way around it. That's what's going to achieve the green solution. And I know a lot of CEOs say, I'm not going to a data center if they don't have a green solution. It's not going to be a decision anymore. It's going to be a necessity. So our backup solution is also going to be green. And we cannot go too much into details yet on how we're going to dispose of the bio, diesel and all that. But we have all the executives that I'm working with, they are all professionals and we all pull in the same direction. So literally to make the world a better place, because we already built data centers, we already made the impact. So we got nothing else to prove, but now we have to move into the next phase.
The next phase of innovation
Yes.
and of what comes next.
Absolutely.
And you gave some great insights there for our viewers. So thank you so much
Thank you.
of what's ahead
Yes.
and how the industry is coming together to not only innovate, but to leave the world a better place. So is there anything else that you wanted to add today to our viewers tuning in?
Well, the one thing that I really look like for me personally in my career, okay, so what's next? I always like to plan my career in 5-year increments. So I want to build these flagship facilities, and then I want to be very interested to move into the academia portion of it, because I firmly believe that we have to invest more into that. It cannot be that we have to send an engineer from the United States to go and do something in Thailand when there are intelligent and smart people in the region. And again, moving with the federal government gives us a lot of scissors and we cut the red tape. So also, I don't have to deal with a lot of problems that are happening in the geopolitical world right now. So for me personally and for the viewers out there is like, pick up your phone, go and look in ChatGPT for a moment, go and look in Claude, see what DeepSeek is doing, and get a little bit curious, because once you get curious and you see this industry, and I would like to see more young talent, and I would like to see the companies innovate a little bit more, because I feel like we are lacking on the innovation. And my CEO is asking me every 5 minutes, why, Ben, please explain to me, why nobody's doing this? I'm like, because it's not as easy as people think. We've seen a lot of people get into our industry trying to catch the gold rush. The faster they came in, they got faster out. So now the people that have been in the industry, like Jamie and I, for 25 plus years, I don't want to say how long because that makes us young, but I think that we have a responsibility for the next generation to build the right thing and also build the academy. So because we need this. It's necessary.
The next generation definitely holds the key. And one thing that you mentioned was staying curious. And that's actually our outro here at JSA TV. So thank you, viewers, for tuning in to another episode of JSA TV. Thank you, Benjamin,
so much
for joining us. Again, thank you, viewers. Stay curious, stay connected, and happy networking.
Thank you.
Welcome back to JSA TV, where we're covering the latest stories, trends, and innovations from leaders in digital infrastructure. I'm Buffy Harakitis of JSA, and joining me today is Erica Guo. She is the Chief of Staff at Stern Recruiting. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here today. Thank you for having me.
Excited to be here live at ITW 2025 in National Harbor. It's day 2 of the event. It's absolutely buzzing. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about Stern Recruiting?
Okay, well, Storm Recruiting, we're a relatively new company in the recruiting business. We specialize in telecom and technology placements. We work with many of the companies that are here today. And, we were founded by our CEO, Rick Stern, who's been in the telecom business for over 30 years. And most of our staff comes from his previous company and from telecom. It's actually a funny story because Rick and I met at Harvard years ago, and we've kept in touch all these years. And when he was launching Stern Recruiting, he called me, and we reconnected, and here we are. The rest is history. We're building this exciting company together.
That's amazing, and congratulations on that refound connection to bring you to the Chief of Staff at Stern Recruiting. So as Chief of Staff, you're deeply involved in talent acquisition and solving some of the challenges in the industry. Why don't you give us a little more insight into that?
Yeah, so we launched this big company because when Rick was building NITEL, one of the biggest challenges that frustrated him was getting a lot of resumes thrown at him, working with recruiters who really didn't understand the roles, really did not understand the industry. And so we think we can do a better job with Stern Recruiting. One of the things that makes us unique is that everyone on our team has been in telecom for 20, 30 years. So we actually know these roles more deeply and intimately, more than just a job description. We actually have done those roles, and we know many people that have been in this business. And so we're able to really pinpoint the exact skills that are needed and find the right people for the right roles.
Well, that's important, especially in today's industry where the demand for new opportunities and new roles is hard to find. And it's important to have, a recruiting agency like yours specifically for telecom and data centers.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. Exactly. So at ITW, we've been hearing a lot about the latest innovations, demands in the data center sector, the lack of skill set in the data center sector. Why don't you give us some insight in there and how you stay ahead of these trends to ensure that you're placing the right people at the right time with the right organizations?
Yeah, so I think our entire process is very unique. The whole recruiting industry, it's a little bit antiquated, if you ask us. And we start with having experts, industry professionals who've known the business for a long time. We start with them. They lead all of our searches, and then we go through a completely different process. We then do video interviews. We do deep screenings with personality profiles, and we have our subject matter experts who then review and evaluate all the candidates. So with all of that, we think we present a more complete candidate profile that we present to our clients. So we do most of the work up front, where traditionally in this industry, a lot of that onus is then put onto the client to be able to do that themselves. We're doing all of that already, and then we present the results and our summary to our clients. So in doing so, we think we have a much better process and a very different and unique process that we can offer to our customers.
Yeah, especially with AI and edge and data center operations and the surge there in that industry, I'm sure you're seeing a lot of opportunities available. What are you seeing the hottest opportunities out there right now?
We see a lot of demand in data centers, but even in traditional telecom roles. I think we are very fortunate that this industry is booming, and a lot of our clients are hiring and growing their business in the U.S. So there's a lot of opportunities, but I think the challenge for them is finding the right talent, and that's where we come in.
That's where you guys come in. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's much needed, especially with things moving and evolving and changing so quickly, to have a strong recruiter on your side to fill those roles and fill them with the right candidates quickly.
Right. And I will say on the AI front, we are seeing a lot of clients asking for AI skills, asking for people who know AI well. That's definitely a trend that we are seeing. And as a business, we do use AI throughout our platform, but I don't think it's at a point where AI can replace any people on our team or it can replace full employees at companies. But what AI has been doing is empowering our staff and empowering some of our clients to be more efficient in the work that they already do.
I think it's at an efficiency stage, right?
Right.
We still need the human touch, and hopefully always will.
Exactly.
Because there's nothing that can replace a human touch.
Right.
Well, given the critical nature of data center operations, obviously we talked a lot about what you're doing to help recruit. You're building resilient workforces to meet these evolving demands of the demanding data center industry that we all know and love. Is there anything else you want to add?
I will say that it's a very exciting time to be in
Yes,
telecom
I
and
agree.
to be in data centers. There's a lot of activity. There's a lot of investment that's coming into this space. So it is a great time to be in business here. And we're really fortunate that we have the expertise to be able to ride this momentum. So yeah, it's a really good time to be here. And we're thrilled. Our business is definitely booming and happening. And we're riding this wave. So
Yeah.
we're really excited.
Well, congratulations. So if someone is looking for a role, or if there's an organization in telecom or data centers that are looking to fill roles, where can they go?
www.sternrecruiting.com, or you can find me directly on LinkedIn under Erica Guo for Stern Recruiting. We're always looking for talented, smart people, and we're always looking for good partners to work with.
Great, Erica. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, viewers, for tuning in to another episode of JSA TV live from ITW 2025. Stay curious, stay connected, and happy networking. Welcome back to JSA TV, where we're covering the latest stories, trends, and innovations from leaders in digital infrastructure. I'm Buffy Harakitis of JSA, and joining me today is Sarah Balzer. She is the Senior Director of Client Services at TurningPoint Global Solutions. Sarah, it's your first time on JSA TV, so welcome.
It is. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about Turning Point and some of its unique value propositions?
Yes, absolutely. Turning Point Global Solutions provides software, business process outsourcing, as well as IT professional services for healthcare, government, as well as commercial customers. So whether we are providing resources or software, we really focus on making technology simple. So we service our customers so that they can really focus on servicing their customers and focus on the overall customer experience.
Yeah, you have a specific product, right, that addresses some key industry trends. We'd love to hear more.
Yes. So across the industry, and as we're speaking with clients, we are seeing more and more teams challenged with doing more with less. And companies are really focused on improving efficiencies and really eliminating manual work wherever they can. Additionally, we're seeing really a strong shift and further resurgence of digital self-service experiences for the end user. And this is where Turning Point comes in. So when we work with our customers, we want to focus on simplifying the complex. And that's where O2CI, our O2CI platform, which is short for Order Orchestration Carrier Interface, really helps to streamline these business processes. So whether it be the complex process of porting numbers in between carriers or ordering network services, it could be third-party services, streamlining those into a single normalized flow and giving real-time insights and data to teams so that they can focus on, not the rework of the order. It gives a smoother experience for the customer and overall, just brings everything, together into one simple structure. And really, once in place, O2CI acts as a foundation to support that digital self-service. So it's a more transparent and just smoother experience across the board. And really what we're seeing with various companies is broadening these service offerings internationally. And that is where we're also heavily investing so that we can continue to support them whenever and wherever they need us to.
So going and growing with your clients.
Absolutely. You tell us where we need to be and we'll be there.
It sounds like a very much needed platform within this industry for sure.
Yes.
So let's wrap up with a topic that's obviously hot at this conference, at every conference, everywhere you turn. I call it the A word, AI, and you work closely with many industries, obviously employing AI initiatives. What are you seeing there and what trends are you noticing?
Yes, absolutely. Just as you said, here at the conference, any of the conversations we're having with clients, seems like every other news article you open is about AI these days, and it's really the hot topic. And at Turning Point, we've actually already implemented next-gen AI as well as RPA, or robotic process automation, for things such as correcting errors within the workflow, which eliminates that manual work we were talking about earlier, and also to automate some of these processes where APIs may not exist today. So beyond what we've already done, we're continuing to innovate on that. And we have some new exciting API announcements coming soon that we can't wait to share.
Oh, we can't wait to hear them. So stay tuned for those announcements from Turning Point. Sarah, where can viewers go if they want to learn more?
Absolutely. We'll always reach out to connect. Our website is tpgsi.com, and we're happy to connect and see how we can help.
All right, Sarah. Well, thank you so much for joining us today for an episode of JSA TV live here from ITW 2025 in the beautiful National Harbor. And thank you, viewers, for tuning in. Stay curious, stay connected, and happy networking. Welcome to JSA TV, where we're covering the latest stories, trends, and innovations from leaders in digital infrastructure. I'm Buffy Harakitis of JSA, and joining me today is none other but the legend here himself, Bill Severn. He's the CEO and president of 1623 Farnum. Bill, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Buffy.
Absolutely, it's our pleasure. And you have your greener data socks on, as
do.
you mentioned. We're so excited to see you and have you a part of our event tonight. Year after year, you bring so many insights to the industry. And the last time we spoke, you were discussing some major upgrades to the 1623 Farnum facility. So I want to give viewers a little update on those upgrades and how things are coming along.
Absolutely. We're really proud to bring to the market. We're finishing out the last 2 floors of our building today. We're right in the middle of the project, and that project will complete in mid-June, at the latest, late June. It'll bring another 1.5 megawatts of capacity to the building and complete the building. We're actively pre-selling that space now, and those talks are going well, and really excited about the future.
Yeah, it sounds like the future is bright, and you guys just keep getting bigger and growing and meeting some of the critical demands.
Absolutely.
For sure in that market. And peering and interconnection is at the heart of what you do there in Omaha, and obviously the Omaha IX Internet Exchange. Why don't you give viewers a little update on that?
Absolutely. So what we've seen over the last 12 months is the daily traffic of peering in the exchange is nearly doubled. And, you know, the eyeball networks are wanting to consume more content closer to the edge, to their customers. And we're having lots of discussions. We're driving a lot of new content into the IX. So that's where we're really seeing that peering fabric grow. The other thing on the downside is what I call set it and forget it. So there are still a lot of customers out there that sign up and activate a peering port, and they set it and they forget it. And so they don't take advantage sometimes of all of the content that is available to them. And so over the past 12 months, we've taken really a one-on-one approach to really help people maximize the benefits of being in the IX.
Yeah, the Internet Exchange for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, it's important. I mean, you can't set it and forget it. It's
Absolutely.
definitely.
As fast as things are changing today.
Yeah, and things are changing very fast as we're
Yeah.
hearing all around this conference floor today.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the unique aspects of your facility is the integration with the Cordia Downtown Omaha District Energy System.
Yeah.
Which is very important. Can you talk a little bit about how that relationship is enhancing your sustainability and your green initiatives?
Absolutely. So when we did our contract with Cordia, they're our chilled water provider. So we negotiated dual feeds from a north and a south plant. And then in the design, we designed the system to where in Omaha, we can take advantage of cooler days. So when it's below 50 degrees, so that's roughly 35 to 40% of the year, we can free cool with the cool air on the roof. And then we've worked with them most recently on securing wind energy. And so now we can state clearly that both of the plants that provide our chilled water are 100% run off of wind energy. So our entire chilled water solution is 100% green as of about a month ago.
So we'll be cheering to that tonight at the Greener Data event, and you're one of our featured authors year after year. So thanks again. Is there anything else that you want to add today?
I just say that the conference has been very well attended, and just the excitement, the enthusiasm of everybody here is really exciting.
Yeah, it has been one for the record books for sure. I think one of the largest to date. And like you said, so many important conversations are happening, from sustainability to AI to the next generation, and how we're going to continue this movement that we have here in the industry. Well, thank you again so much for joining us. Just tell viewers where they can go if they want to learn more.
1623farnum.com.
There you go. Thank you so much, Bill, for joining us.
Buffy.
Always a pleasure to have you. And thank you, viewers, for joining us for another episode of JSA TV. Stay curious, stay connected, and happy networking. Welcome to JSA TV, where we're covering the latest stories, trends, and innovations from leaders in digital infrastructure. I'm Buffy Harakitis of JSA, and joining me today, we have a very special guest, Octavio Camarana. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Kio.
How are you? Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Good. Welcome to JSA.
Very happy.
So, why don't you tell us a little bit more about Kio, what the company does, and then we'll dive into some other questions.
Great. Q is probably the biggest data center company in Mexico. We were the pioneers. The company was founded almost 25 years ago. And we started, as a matter of fact, in Querétaro, which has turned to be one of the major data center hubs in Latam.
Well, that leads me right into this next question. As you mentioned, it is a major hub in Latin America in the digital infrastructure market. What does Kio attribute to the exponential growth in this region?
Well, as you know, we were the pioneers there. The first brick ever to be a data center in Querétaro was put there by Kio. And Querétaro is logistically, strategically for many reasons. First of all, the climate is perfect. So it affects the way you cool down the data center, which is critical in our industry. Second, the tectonic plates are not very rigid, so you don't have a lot of earthquakes in Mexico. You have to think about earthquakes as a factor. So it's a very mild zone for earthquakes. Second, it's like Querétaro is in the middle. It's like the hub that unites the north with Mexico City. So it's the pathway. So every single, you would say this like the aorta that unites the center with the north. So it's strategically. Also, they have a lot of universities. So manpower-wise, you can get a lot of engineers, high-quality engineers. And obviously, it has become one of the major hubs because of the support we get from local governments there. So that's really what turned Querétaro into the Virginia of Mexico.
Okay, so it is like the data center alley.
It is the Virginia of Mexico, exactly.
All right. Well, given the growth over time, what specific role do you play in that region? Does Kio play there in that region?
Well, we like to think ourselves as the major player. As you know, we were the pioneers. We're growing tremendously in the region. We're creating a mega campus. We started 20-something years ago with a Querétaro 1. We're going to be launching Querétaro 2. The first phase was launched this January, and we're going to terminate this in probably a couple of months more. That's the Querétaro 2, and we're going to end up with Querétaro 3. That's a bigger expansion to make this mega campus approximately 12 months from now. And we believe we're going to be prepared to be the major player. We have land, we have power. You know, power is essential in our industry.
Yeah.
So we have been working quite thoroughly to assure that we have the power that our clients need.
I mean, we've been hearing all about power today between our interviews and several of the panels. So having the power in place is critically important.
Critical.
Definitely. So you, obviously, Kio has established itself as one of the leading data center providers in Latin America. What do you see your strategy and some of the main pillars for your strategic continued growth as we approach the future here?
Right. As you know, let me just start by saying Kio is established in Mexico, Guatemala, Panama, Colombia, and Dominican Republic. We have those 5 markets. So we believe it's essential to have a footprint in what you call North Latam, which is what I just mentioned. And we're preparing for the AI growth. As a matter of fact, in AI in Latam, no one can really say there's establishment or a real deployment of AI in Latam. Whoever says that is lying in a real basis. But we're preparing for that on a land and a power basis, and we're already having discussions with the usual suspects to start finding a way to structure a consistent and rigid and very established AI component, not only for inference, but also for training. So I can tell you that we're getting ready for that, and it's going to come. It's going to be a matter of time, but we have already started those conversations, and they will get there.
Well, it sounds like you're definitely prepared. As AI, we've been hearing all about that, of course, too, here, and in that market as a leader there. So is there anything else you want to add today?
Just if you want a partner to grow in Latin America, look for Kio.
Look for Kio.
We are the partner.
They are the partner.
Thank you.
One of the top in Latin America. So why don't you tell viewers if they do want to partner and want to learn more about Kio, where to go?
Well, please go to kio.tech, and you can approach us with all our media. It's called kio.tech, kio.tech.mx. So please just www.kio. You know where to find us.
Yeah. Or reach out to JSA. We'll be happy to connect you. with the leaders over at Kio. Octavio, thank you so much
you,
for
thank
joining
you.
us today. Absolutely
Happy
a
to be
pleasure.
with you guys.
And thank you, viewers, for tuning in to another episode of JSA TV, live from ITW 2025. Stay curious, stay connected, and happy networking.
And come to Latam with Kio.
I'm going to take you up on that. Welcome back to JSA TV, where we're covering the latest stories, trends, and innovations from leaders in digital infrastructure. I'm Buffy Harakitis of JSA, and joining me today is Nick Caruzzi. He is the Chief Operating Officer at GPC Infrastructure. Nick, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we are here in National Harbor for ITW 2025 Day 2, and we're honored to be speaking with you today, specifically around GPC Infrastructure's power and cooling solutions, which is all the rage, all the buzz here at the event. And your specific solution solves behind the meter strategies. So why don't you talk to viewers a little bit more about that?
Perfect. I'd be glad to. So, I mean, everyone is well aware that power has become basically the single greatest problem that the data center industry is facing. When can you get power? How much can you get? What is the level of service and reliability that you're able to procure for your installations? Because of that, we're seeing a big surge in the behind the meter type solution, right? The utility is saying, maybe 2030, maybe 2031. We at GPC feel that a natural gas based solution is the right fit for prime power baseload for the data center, really looking at taking the power back and giving that control to the data center. And, interesting, when I first got into the data center industry, I heard a really funny quote at one of the conferences. And it was basically, data centers love new technology as long as it's 20 years old. And I thought, well, guess what, guys? Co-located generation is not a new thing. Behind the meter solutions have existed for other industries like refining, petrochemicals, pulp and paper. Really, once you get above a certain size and power demand, behind the meter really becomes the forefront solution. And I think over time, the industry is really going to move in that direction, not just as a bridge or a temporary solution, or, we're going to solve the problem until the utility shows up, but really as a preferred solution, because from a fundamentals first standpoint, it really makes sense. Like, kind of the break-even threshold in our mind is around 50 megawatts. Once you kind of get above that 50 megawatt range, you've got the economies of scale as well as the benefits to do behind the meter. And then on top of that, as you mentioned, we talked a little bit about behind meter and cooling. There's a lot of really interesting things you can do with cooling integration the moment that you have co-located generation assets. So when we're thinking about all the benefits and really, again, the fundamentals first reason why you would want to do behind the meter, it's not just, oh, I have on-site power.
Right.
Oh, I can get this on a better schedule. Oh, I can have the right reliability. It's also more sustainable and opens up efficiencies and flexibilities in the data center that you can't do with the grid.
Yeah, I mean, definitely need to start thinking and shifting into different areas, like you said, behind the meter strategies, and the grid just can't keep up, right?
Exactly.
And that's what we're hearing day in and day out. So it sounds like GPC is doing some innovative work with this behind the meter power generation and absorption chilling, right?
Exactly.
So why don't you break down a little bit more about how these solutions work together and why they matter, why they're important to modern data centers?
Perfect. Yeah, this is all kind of a concept called combined heat and power, and you can even expand it a little bit further to say combined heat, power, and cooling. So when you have a generation asset on site, a thermal generation asset, which if you're doing natural gas, you're going to have a thermal generation asset, you now have a lot of excess heat. That excess heat can be captured in what are called absorption chillers, which use the heat of absorption of solutes moving in and out of solvents to generate cooling. You might say, how does heat ever turn into cooling? Well, the existing chillers a data center use work on essentially the same principle. They just use a refrigerant and they compress it between vapor and liquid. When you do that, you can extract heat and move heat back into the environment, generates cooling. Similarly, with an absorption chiller, you can move a solute in and out of a solvent, and that allows you to use the waste heat to move heat out of the data center and generate a cooling stream. So in practice, the way this works is if you have 100 megawatts of on-site generation, you can generate easily up to 100 megawatts of equivalent cooling. So when you think of a data center PUE, right, like 1.4, 1.5, something like that, right? That basically says you need about 50% more energy, 40 to 50% more energy for cooling than you do for the base load. So with an on-site generation setup, you have a 1-to-1 excess, which means you have about twice as much heat, excess heat, than what you need to generate all the cooling for the data center. And what this really translates to, for a bottom line perspective, for a data center owner operator and tenant, is that you can completely offset your chillers, your standard vapor compression chillers. So think of that 1.4 PUE, that 1.5 PUE. That could look more like a 1.1 PUE, which, if you're a 100 megawatt total site and you moved your 1.4 to a 1.1 PUE, you just freed up about 25 megawatts of IT capacity that you can sell to a tenant.
Well, that definitely sounds like something modern data centers should be interested in. And if they're not, they better start thinking about some of this CHP.
Yep. Combined heat and power for sure. We really think that you'll see a lot of this coming down the pipe because, again, from a fundamentals first perspective, capturing the waste heat, using it for cooling, delivering higher efficiencies, it makes all the sense in the world. And we think, as people get comfortable with behind the meter solutions, get comfortable with alternative cooling solutions, that you'll see people move there. The economics are going to push it.
Well, it's definitely not only the sustainable factor of it, but of course also the economic factor as well.
Yep.
So cogeneration has been around for decades, but it's rarely been as relevant as it has been now. What's changing in the market that makes on-site cogeneration more important, a smart move?
Yeah, so that's a really good question because, necessity is the mother of invention, right? And, you rewind maybe 5 or 6 years before the AI boom, before all this high performance compute has tripled our rack density or more, has really shot up the typical power load of a data center. When you were a 10, 20 megawatt, 30 megawatt data center, you simply didn't have the economies of scale to be able to do this. There's a lot of overhead costs to get started. You got to get natural gas on site, you got to put in more capital equipment. So for a small data center, this doesn't make quite as much sense. That's why I mentioned earlier, when you think kind of breakpoint wise, maybe 50 megawatts is kind of really about the right threshold. Now that, most new data centers that are being announced are well above 50 megawatts, now you've got a fundamental driving reason here that really pushes you in this direction of, on-site generation. Some of it people are viewing as simply, okay, the grid's not here. But I think once people get comfortable with this and start seeing the solution in practice and more people doing it, there's some programs out there that are getting deployed, that this move will start kind of as a waterfall. They'll say, slowly and then all at once.
Right.
Some of the other things about cogeneration is, really the efficiency speaks for itself. And, when we talk about sustainability in a minute as well too, being efficient is one of the best paths to sustainability. So when we talk about the economic efficiency, there's also the sustainability that comes from that as well.
Yeah, which obviously is a core pillar here at JSA with our Greener Data Initiative, and bringing the industry together towards that movement. And it's not optional anymore. It's just simply not. We're hearing about it day in and day out everywhere at this conference as well. Every conference, how to make the world a more greener place and leave it better for the next generation. Particularly, obviously, in sectors like digital infrastructure, data infrastructure. How are you helping operators shrink their carbon footprint while maintaining the most important part, which is reliability as well?
Exactly, yeah. We see behind the meter solutions as one of the most sustainable ways that you can address the needs of today. So if you think about the grid right now, particularly think about the marginal kilowatt hour that's generated. You've got a base load, you've got your renewables, you've got some nuclear in the country, you've got fossil fuels on top of that. When you have incremental power demand on the grid, which if you're a new data center, your incremental power demand on the grid, a lot of that is being served by very inefficient generation. The country as a whole is very, very behind on building new generation and building new transmission, particularly. So in order to get those kilowatt hours to your data center, you're reviving old coal plants, you're reviving peaker generation that's 40 years out of date that didn't have the economics to run. Now suddenly they do because of this big boom in power. So by moving behind the meter just by itself, you're going to use newer technology, more efficient technology, and then you additionally avoid a lot of the, we'll call it inefficiency losses of the grid. Every time you transform, you lose 2 or 3% efficiency. Moving hundreds of miles of electricity loses a few percent. Like those percentages really matter. But that's just like the base assumption. When you tie in combined heat and power, you think the grid right now, it's about call it 40% efficient. A behind the meter solution is going to be somewhere in the 45 to 60% efficient solution, depending on the exact technologies you pick. So big improvement there already. When you combine this with absorption chilling for a combined heat and power application, you can reach 90% efficiency. 90% thermal efficiency, more than double, almost triple what the grid has. That is real CO2 that's not being released. That's a real marginal benefit. And that's just, from a technology and efficiency standpoint. Then you have some other options, including things like renewable energy credits that you can purchase. And with on-site natural gas, you can also purchase what is called renewable natural gas. So renewable natural gas is made from digesters, it's made from landfills, and it basically captures that methane that would have been emitted to the atmosphere and pipes it into our natural gas system. And the thing about renewable natural gas is it's actually carbon negative. So you can put a blend of 8, 10, 12% renewable natural gas in your stream and achieve true carbon neutrality, literally zero carbon. And a lot of that is because methane, when emitted to the atmosphere, is a much more potent greenhouse gas than CO2 is. So by giving an economic reason to capture that landfill gas and then feed it to your behind-the-meter solution, you've taken something that was a big negative externality, found a useful benefit for it, and now everyone's better off for it.
Wow, it definitely sounds like the viewers tuning in and some of the data centers here at this conference that are looking for the most innovative carbon negative solution available, they should be contacting you.
I would love to talk to anyone.
Why don't you tell viewers to go where they can find more information?
Yeah, so again, I'm Nick Cruzy. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of GPC Infrastructure. Our website is GPC, and that stands for Gas Powered Compute, but gpcinfrastructure.com. I'd love to hear from anyone.
And thank you so much, Nick, for joining us today for another episode of JSA TV. Thank you, viewers, for tuning in. Stay curious, stay connected, and happy networking. Welcome to JSA TV, where we're covering the latest stories, trends, and innovations from leaders in the digital infrastructure industry. I'm Buffy Harakitis of JSA, and joining me today is Mike Padula. He is the Vice President of Education, Carrier, and Channel Sales for Cantara.
Pleasure.
Mike,
Great to be here.
Yes,
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah.
So great to have you here. Why don't you start by telling us about Cantara and the
Sure.
work that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Cantara is a 25-year-old telecommunications company. We are headquartered in Charlotte, North Carolina. We own and operate our own network. We are in 21 states, and we have 14,000 fiber miles. Yep. And we're people powered. We call fiber powered. So we really we take personal pride in our network, and it's fully scalable out there in the marketplace.
Okay. Well, what trends are keeping an eye on in the
Sure.
industry? I mean, what are you learning here
Sure.
on the floor at ITW? Anything that you want to share with our viewers tuning in?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a great show for us. It's a really internationally focused show. So everybody that's in the space is here, right? So it's a great time to connect with all the buyers and sellers across the industry. So from a trend standpoint, the biggest trend right now is really AI that we're seeing. We build high-performing, scalable fiber networks, and so the hyperscalers right now, there's a lot of demand out from the hyperscalers to build out new data centers in rural areas. We primarily focus in on rural areas, and so now they're coming out closer to us, and they want to get closer to the grid, and that's where we really perform well for them. So we see a big push with AI right now, and primarily with the hyperscalers and everyone else that kind of feeds into that spectrum.
Okay. So when you say hyperscalers
Yeah.
and AI, I mean, obviously there's some news out there that maybe some of that's slowing down, some of the investments in AI, but you're not seeing any slowdown there?
No,
on your side?
definitely not. The demand for fiber, especially from an IRU-based standpoint, is growing year over year. That trend will not slow down whatsoever. There's a whole different kind of ecosystem of I would say companies that feed into the hyperscalers or driving high-speed internet in rural areas, and it's all getting the networks out to the edge and making sure that we're getting close to eyeballs, the users like us.
Right.
And so these verticals are CDN players. These are social media content providers and gaming providers. So they all want to get as close to the edge to people like us, eyeballs, to use their stuff, and they need to high-powered, fast internet, and it's all fiber-driven. So no, I do not see that trend or the demand for fiber decreasing anytime soon.
Well, that's good to hear. Yeah, especially with the getting closer to the end users and having that low latency there. Definitely. What major change do you anticipate in the next few years? Any changes at all that you see?
I really don't. I just think the demand is going to be greater. We play well with everybody that's moving into rural areas now, and that's where we primarily play. So I just think demand's going to be going increasing. So I don't see really any major challenges, except for us, we just have to make sure we have enough fiber to support the growing demand in the marketplace, and I feel that we're positioned to do that better than most of our competition out there in the marketplace. Yep.
Yeah, and you think that's what sets you apart there?
It does. We are. I always say we're lean and mean, but we move fast, and we're very. We work very well across our internal ecosystems and business units, and so we make decisions fast, and everybody's involved, especially on the larger deals, and so we're very nimble, and our pricing is very aggressive as well, and we take personal pride in the post-sale activity, which is the most important thing, implementation, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
So if viewers want to learn more about Cantara, can you give them a
Of course.
little taste of where to go?
Yeah, so you can go to Cantara.com, and that'll pull up everything we do, not just from wholesale, but also in the enterprise space as well. Yep.
All right, Mike. Well, thank you so much for
Yeah.
joining me today
I
here
enjoyed it.
on JSA TV from ITW 2025. And thank you, viewers, for tuning in to another episode of JSA TV. Stay curious, stay connected, and happy networking. Welcome to JSA TV, where we're covering the latest stories, trends, and innovations from leaders in digital infrastructure. I'm Buffy Harakitis of JSA, and joining me today is Romo Ball. He is the CEO of Australa.
That's right.
Welcome.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, it's a pleasure to have you here. Your first time on JSA TV, I believe.
My first time on JSA TV, indeed.
So why don't you start by telling viewers a little bit more about your company and the work that you do?
Yeah, sure. Look, Australa is a global technology services and solutions company. We help some of the world's most innovative enterprises simplify their complex IT operations, modernize their infrastructure, and scale with confidence. What sets us apart, I think, is our focus. All right. So we're not trying to be everything to everyone. We've built deep expertise across three core areas in digital infrastructure, which are cloud and infrastructure services, enterprise AI services, and digital workplace solutions. For telecom and hyperscaler leaders, more relevant for ITW here, Buffy, the pressures are clear. It's scaling infrastructure globally, it's enabling low latency, edge performance, and it's modernizing operations without adding complexity. Right? And that's where we come in. We run global NOCs for Fortune 10 clients. We help teams modernize their network infrastructure and embed AI into their operations to reduce outages, reduce ticket volumes, and all of that manual effort that's out there. We manage over 36,000 AV endpoints, as an example, globally. We deliver tierless AI-powered service desks that resolve issues in seconds, not hours. So what do? I'd sum it up as we modernize, we automate, we scale, and most importantly, we help our clients, take care of what's coming next.
Well, I mean, it sounds like your services are in very much need, high demand here, especially with all the conversations happening that I'm hearing here at ITW. I mean, you mentioned AI and how that's being integrated, but what trends, including AI, obviously, are you keeping an eye on in the industry, or any other trends that you're keeping an eye on?
Well, look, I mean, the trends are driven by clients, obviously. And for me, what's happening in the world of telco is, of course, this massive transformation driven by AI, driven by analytics, digitization, and now, of course, 5G everywhere, right? So the telcos are forming strategic alliances with hyperscalers like AWS, Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, and all of those guys are coming deeper into networking than they ever have into telecom. They host core network functions now. They're assembling sort of telecom, branded offerings. And so that convergence of telecom and cloud, that trend is accelerating innovation in at least three ways. It's AI-powered decisioning, it's intelligent automation, it's cloud-native infrastructure at scale. And at Australa, we help telecom leaders sort of bridge that gap, right? So we're supporting modernization, integration, if you will, and performance optimization across that new evolving landscape. And whether it's building out global edge infrastructure or embedding predictive intelligence into their operations, we ensure that our clients don't just keep up, that they lead.
Stay ahead, yeah. It's important to stay ahead, especially as you mentioned, in such a ever evolving landscape.
Indeed.
Here. What major changes, if any, do you anticipate within the industry in the next few years, say?
Well, look, the biggest thing is AI, right? AI isn't some future concept. It's already here, and it's actively reshaping how our customers are conducting or operating their businesses. So across sort of the hybrid infrastructure, workspace, data centers, networks, we are driving a shift from reactive firefighting to predictive automated operations. So think about systems that anticipate failures before they happen. They can evaluate the root causes in real time and actually fix issues or resolve issues through intelligent agents without the lag of traditional queues, right? The ticket queues and all of that. So at Australa, as an example, we're making three significant investments to get ready for this next evolution with AI. We've built a library of 200 plus AI agents across service desk, across device types, across infrastructure and application workflows, etc. We've reskilled our workforce to work in that and our that AI enabled delivery mode. And then finally, we've strengthened our strategic partnerships with hyperscalers and software players like Google Cloud and ServiceNow, our largest strategic alliances.
Well, it sounds like you're well prepared for these changes that you anticipate coming in the future, again, in such an ever evolving landscape.
It sure is.
Well, thank you so much, Romo, for joining us today. Is there anything else you wanted to add or let viewers know where to go if they want to learn more?
Well, Australia.com, we're certainly present here. If you're at the ServiceNow Knowledge 25, not to plug a different conference when I'm at this conference, I got a dozen people there. We look forward to chatting soon. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you so much, Romo. And thank you, viewers, for tuning in to another episode of JSA TV live from ITW 2025. Stay curious, stay connected, and happy networking.